Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Enterprise Forum Web3 in Focus, Session 2. I'm your host, Abs, or people call me Nagatoshi. Everyone has alias names nowadays. Yeah, I had a great pleasure of hosting these on a monthly basis. Last month, we had the amazing session with Hello Labs, 45B, Vesper Wallet, and we spoke great lengths in various topics. And it was amazing, and that's why we decided to do a session 2 as always. And today's topic, we're diving into a critical topic, which is for builders in Cardano ecosystem. So it is as architectural to adoption, and it is about building practical pathways to Web3 enterprises. I've been joined by three fantastic speakers who are building some of the most impactful infrastructure and frameworks across the ecosystem. Under no favoritism, I shall bring them up. So the first one is Ashwin. He's the Chief BD Officer at ZenBlocks. Ashwin is... Hi, Ashwin. How are you? Hello. Next is Dimitri, founder of Dynamic Strategies. Hi, Dimitri. And last but not least, Kabir, the co-founder and CEO of NewNet. Here we go. Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Great.
Yeah, all good, thanks.
Amazing to hear that. So I want to invite you guys to first just talk about a bit of an introduction on what you guys are, what's your project about, just a brief intro on what you guys are up to. So Ashwin, do you want to start with it? And then we go from Kabir and then Dimitri. Yeah.
Sure, Abek. Thanks for having me here, and good to meet everyone, Kabir, Dimitri. As Abek already sort of briefly introduced, I'm Ashwin. Based in Singapore. I represent ZenBlocks, which is a blockchain integration compliance platform. We're essentially making blockchain adoption simpler and seamless for enterprises in terms of how they can adopt the technology in different protocols. And we are agnostic to any protocol, network, and use case. So essentially, which helps a simpler adoption of the technology in terms of blockchain adoption. So I am based in Singapore, and I'm spearheading the commercial efforts for ZenBlocks in the region. And ZenBlocks is, as I said, it's all-in-one blockchain integration and compliance platform built to simplify adoption of decentralized technologies by enterprises. We are particularly focused in finance, supply chain, and public sector ecosystem. So, just as a brief intro about ZenBlocks. Thank you.
Kabir, do you want to start?
Yes. So hello again. I'm Kabir. I'm representing NewNet, and I'm based in Belgium. Basically, my if I can call that area of expertise, if there is even kind of if it's even relevant nowadays, if there's anything that you can be expert in, is basically I started from business management and gravitated towards AI, basic artificial intelligence research and application, and software development, let's say management. So, and at NewNet, we started NewNet basically 5 years ago as a project in order to kind of power the decentralized network with also decentralized orchestration, hardware orchestration technology. So to enable to reach decentralized hardware for decentralized basically technologies, computing technologies. So what we essentially are doing is something that sometimes we call orchestration layer for decentralized compute, or let's say decentralized Kubernetes, with a payment layer. So basically what we're doing orchestration of any compute on any hardware that is able to compute anything, basically. That's the vision. Of course, we are choosing our best let's say, targets depending on time, and introducing payment layers. So basically all the compute can pay to any machine that is onboarded onto the network. That would be in short. And that comes with actually, if I could describe in a very general manner, so we are operating on 3 layers, technological layer that I was just described, and the ability for community, because we are open source project, for community to build with us and to build what is needed, and for us to see what's needed for the community, for enterprise, Web2, Web3, and the community themselves. And last but not least is to have a network dynamics governance, which is usually called decentralized governance, to bootstrap the network of many agents which are very heterogeneous.
Thank you, Kabir, for that introduction. Dimitri, would you want to give us your...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Dimitri. I run Dynamic Strategies. We are a company based in Portugal. Our team is split primarily between Portugal and the Netherlands, although we have members sort of traveling around constantly. My background is in finance. I spent 20 years at sort of large banks across risk management and trading. We spend our time 50% building on blockchains, Cardano being the main one, and the other 50% advising institutions around the areas of risk management, trading, compliance, that sort of stuff. On Cardano, we are currently building a platform for settling interest rate derivatives, which is the largest market for banks. It's not very well known to retail because it's controlled by banks. So we are trying to democratize it and give it access to an average retail individual. So happy to be here. That's it for the intro.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for all 3 of you introducing yourselves. And it's really nice to have a nice spectrum of different broad backgrounds coming in and talking about these topics that we're going to be diving into today. So I think let's start with infrastructure. I think that's a good way of starting because it's like the foundation upon which everything else is built. Let me pick on Ashwin to begin with and to kick this off. Ashwin, from your work with enterprise clients at Zenit Blocks, what infrastructure or tooling do they ask for most often, and especially when they're looking to scale or integrate into L2 solutions?
Sure, Abhik. So as I was mentioning about in my introduction, Zenit Blocks is an integration and compliance-driven platform, which is essentially making adoption simpler for enterprises. So in terms of the infrastructure needs, typically what we see from the clients is scalable, address or request for scalable APIs and middleware, which can really mitigate the complexity involved in the adoption of blockchain as a technology, or for that matter, decentralized technology. There's also I would say, growing interest in terms of L2 solutions, and we offer. I'm just. So, in terms of monitoring and compliance tools, I think that is also one of the requests which are being, which are being made by the clients, especially by enterprises with specific regulatory requirements. And we addressed these needs with our modular plug and play toolkits, which businesses can use primarily to focus on their business objectives rather than the technical aspects of underlying protocols. So that's the key which I feel in terms of the engagements we have driven or we are engaging with clients are sort of the core needs from enterprises for scalable APIs and middleware, just to extract away the complexity for the integration, because integration and compliance are the key or the core challenges facing enterprises for the adoption of blockchain across different use cases.
Okay. I would want to sort of ask Kabir or Dimitri if they want to add something to that of what you mentioned. Any points to? No. Okay, so great, thank you, Dimitri. Just building on what Ashwin mentioned, from a governance or architectural perspective, what sort of foundational elements do you think is needed to be in place for the infrastructure to be actually succeed and scale long term?
Yeah, sure. So I think I can probably talk more from the sort of finance side, banking, finance. That's sort of my area of expertise. And I think what Ashwin said about regulation and compliance, that's definitely front and center to those who we speak with. I think so. In the last conversations, I can probably highlight like the 7 things that everybody asked for. And the first one being identity, KYC. So enterprise need to be able to know who they trade with. This being sort of financial industry, very important. So if they can't control who they trade with, then it's becomes a problem, and they look away in terms of not adapting to the solution. They need to be able to have access control. So be able to identify and then control who they trade with. They prefer privacy generally. So financial institutions prefer to have everything private. Information of clients on a public blockchain is quite often a conversation killer, so to say. The next one is probably risk management. So because the enterprise are very sort of risk aware, compliance aware, they need to have tools to be able to set limits. There need to be circuit breakers. There need to be ways for dispute resolution. And if that's a smart contract, then those elements need to be built into it. There needs to be auditability. So everything needs to be auditable. If it's a public blockchain, it's pretty much guaranteed. But for what I said earlier, they also prefer privacy. So it needs to be private and auditable at the same time. And there needs to be quite robust reporting around all transactions, both for regulations, for accounting, and for internal monitoring. And then probably lastly, integrating anything Web3 into a large enterprise needs to talk with their existing IT systems. So managing the legacy infrastructure and connectivity is quite critical as well. That's probably quite a long rundown of things that they care about, but the list is definitely long.
Awesome. No, I do want to come to Kabir, but I think Ashwin, just out of curiosity, last we spoke, this could be something what Dimitri mentioned about, export, import, something that we were talking about last we spoke. It could tie into something. So that it just popped into my head that, oh wow, we were talking about this just a couple of days ago. But we'll talk about that later in the break session. Maybe we can have a topic on that. But Kabir, just to add on to that, let's bring compute into the conversation. Newcos is working at the edge of decentralization. Do you see opportunities to integrate CK or L2 systems to scale workloads on your platform?
So short answer would be yes. So a little bit relating to what was said by Ashwin and Dmitry is, so the way I see kind of as main kind of concepts when building technology in all this let's say these times and these spaces is kind of openness of technology. Means we should be able to integrate a lot of stuff, and kind of choosing something like 5 years, let's say, since we're a deep tech startup, basically from technological perspective, choosing something 5 years before things happen is just too long period. You most surely will make a mistake. Things will change. So having a technology that is open to integrate, and that also relates to the legacy systems, because there are a lot of legacy systems, and I've heard not that long ago that there is a lot of, let's say, Also, financial institutions, they use programming language which is called COBOL. I knew from early days on computer science that this was existing, but I didn't know how many people are actually doing that, because they simply have to support legacy systems. 30 years ago, that's when, which are just being supported. However, there is another legacy part, which is management, kind of the way business are built, business structures, management, basically perspectives, and so on and so forth, which surprisingly enough, or maybe not that surprisingly, that's very much related to the technologies that people are using. Both ways. Technologies basically define what can be used, especially in the short term, because rewriting things, like the example with COBOL says, is just so costly that people are just supporting something that's super old. But that also relates to how businesses are run. And all the decentralization, basically the whole Web3, let's say, movement, let's call it this way. It's not only technological, it's also kind of conceptual. It provides a lot of opportunities, but those opportunities can be actually harnessed only by carefully considering all the business structures that are existing, also technologies that exist, and sort of integrating into them, let's say, in a sort of step-by-step manner. And that's, I guess, this relates to all the technology development. So the simple answer for me is openness. To have a technology that can be that is able to pick protocol and to integrate based on the need of the clients, of a case, of time, etc. and so forth. Not sure I answered now regarding ZK, right? So since it's a little bit related, because what we are strategically, we are doing compute. What is computed is actually we try to push away from ourselves everything that can be computed, which means L2, which has nodes, etc. and so forth, and let's say algorithms, ZK proofs, etc. and so forth. So what we're doing, we are enabling communication between compute devices, between algorithms and compute devices, ability for the orchestration, deployment of compute onto the hardware. And what exactly is this compute? It's not that it's let's say our partners and our clients' business. Our business is to provide as open as possible technology to build everything. Short answer.
Nice. Ashwin, Dimitri, do you want to add something to this?
If I would, Dimitri, you want to go, please? Yeah.
No, fine. Go ahead first.
Yeah, so as Kabir was mentioning regarding the transition from Web 2 or the legacy systems to Web 3 protocols or to Web 3 systems, that's exactly what we are doing, with Zenit Blocks or through Zenit Blocks, is essentially making the entire transition simpler, efficient, easier, faster for enterprises looking to adopt or transition from Web to legacy systems. It could be across ERPs, CRMs, and they want to transition from there. And the biggest challenge they're facing is the complexities around integration and the technicalities around compliance frameworks, regulatory friction, cost inefficiencies in terms of resources. So that's exactly what we are covering through Zenit Blocks. And that's a pertinent point, Kabir, which you made, specifically from the legacy to, moving to Web3. So that's something which we are becoming a bridge for that, to facilitate that transition.
We can definitely see some synergy between ZenBlock and NewNet. We can later on. But Dimitri, you had some comments.
I smirked a little bit when Kabir mentioned COBOL. I've definitely seen applications being run in COBOL, and so I think there's been quite a lot of development in the financial industry in terms of new products appearing in the 90s to early 2000s, and innovation used to happen much quicker in the idea space. New products being developed much quicker than the speed at which technology could follow. So rather than rewriting old systems, just new ones were being built on top and integration somehow patched between what's old and what's new. And also I think at large organizations, who dictates the speed of innovation is who makes the money. So the profit centers, if they can justify that we need this quickly because we are profit centers, then they tend to win in the boardroom. So I think right now it's actually quite interesting the speed of innovation in tech and the ability, the speed at which it's able to adapt is probably overtaken the speed at which financial innovation is happening in the financial sector, primarily due to errors of the past, the financial crisis, the fact that there's much more regulation happening now, so that limits quite significantly how innovative the financial sector is able to be, and tech is catching up. So potentially the fact that DeFi is coming from the tech sector and not from the financial industry itself is because tech is evolving much quicker. So now we are having to grasp ourselves. Well, how do you how do you make sure that the enterprises have robust governance for the tech rather than the other way around? Rather than how does the tech have robust governance for the financial innovation that's happening? That was just my take.
Can I add one sentence which kind of answers the question more precisely, because I just read on the script. In terms of, let's say, actually we are looking to zero knowledge, because when you are running, and this relates to I think other topics, is that when you're running a compute on decentralized hardware where you don't own the hardware and you don't have this, let's say, access that the centralized compute has, which is, you have a perimeter, you own the perimeter, so on and so forth. You have to make sure that things you have to have a definite proof that things that you asked are happening there, because you don't. And here, all these technologies actually come into play. We will have to use them. So that's another answer.
Awesome. No. I did mention this earlier to you guys, but yeah, we are missing Stan from ZK Fall. I mean, I'm sure he would have a lot to talk about, Kabir, and what you mentioned, but definitely we miss him. He's at Rariwa today, so hopefully we'll have some more chat with him later on. We can have another that, but. Now we can sort of shift our focus to sort of compliance and integration, both major hurdles and opportunities for real-world adoption. For this, again, Ashwin, I want to ask you, you're working with enterprise clients daily. What are the key compliances and integration challenges do you see out there, and how does your sort of low code approach help unlock adoption in that way?
So, Abhik, that's an interesting question, and that I get mostly when we have conversations with enterprises, especially with financial institutions, which are regulatory-driven industries or sectors. So, as I was just mentioning earlier, integration and compliance are one of the two core challenges for enterprise adoption of blockchain, or navigating or entering Web3 landscape. Essentially because integration as such becomes very complex because of the transition and the complexity around connecting or integrating legacy systems with the new Web3 protocols. So that becomes a huge challenge, and the complexity increases when it consumes a lot of time, resources, efforts, which essentially slows down or deaccelerates the entire transition. Even if the enterprise is looking at the a sort of a practical use case, practical applications, and they see the value, but ultimately the progress becomes pretty slow. So I believe, based on the discussions and the experience we have been having in conversations with multiple clients across sectors, so integration complexity remains one of the core challenges. Second is around compliance, with respect to different compliance frameworks. How do you really streamline the compliance processes and workflows, which becomes essentially also one of the challenges. Even if you do the integration somehow with legacy to Web3, then the compliance plays a part. So how do you streamline, automate? And that's wherein we play in with the Zenith Blocks offering plug and play modules, wherein you could just draw the workflow. Enterprise can just draw the workflow, draw their processes, and sort of upload it. So it's, essentially it's kind of magical. You can just draw the workflow and it will be converted into smart contracts. Because I'm saying this as a business person, when somebody, a technical person, would be able to really draw the picture clearly how workflows can be converted into smart contracts automatically. So that becomes essentially a sort of a mitigation for enterprises to really resolve the enterprise adoption of Web3 technologies or decentralized technologies. So that's what we are seeing. And recently, incidentally, this is a very relevant thing related to compliance and integration. Uh, we have recently collaborated and partnered with Trade Trust, which is an initiative of IMDA in Singapore. And essentially, Trade Trust is an open source framework. It's, you can consider that as a mediation facilitation platform for businesses to connect with solution providers in the emerging technology space. And blockchain and Web3 is one of the core solution providers or protocols those businesses want to transition to. And we have integrated one of our modules with Trade Trust framework, which now essentially helps enterprises to solve the key integration problem, as I was just saying, to connect their legacy systems with Web3 protocols. They could be on any chain, they could be on any network, they could be on any protocol, but our module can help them, seamlessly integrate from Web 2 legacy to Web 3 protocols. So, and that's the key reason why Trade Trust has also adopted and approached and been very, very receptive to integrate Zenith Blocks module. And just so you know, I mean, this is something which was in the public domain. Trade Trust, in fact, Singapore launched a bill in the parliament about a few years back, I think just after COVID or during COVID, wherein they wanted to digitalize the entire global trade documentation, which is electronic bill of lading. And that's one of the biggest use case we are now solving for them and for the entire ecosystem of businesses, which we are also looking, as I was sharing with you, Abek, earlier, that
Yeah.
we could be looking this at a broader scale for Cardano ecosystem to work with businesses, and then everything will come on the, everything means the businesses you
Yeah.
work with would come on Cardano chain, and then the integration and the transition would become seamless.
I like how
So
you say that it's an open source, move, because we have an open source arm at Intersect. So we can definitely have a talk about the open source, side of things, and I can bring Christian into it, and but that's a separate. I didn't want to get in, but I want to ask
yeah,
Dimitri, Kabir, is there something that you can utilize that expertise of Zenith Blocks in your own stream of work? Because I know, Dimitri, you're also handling real world scenarios in finance. Do you see any scope of utilizing what Ashwin is bringing on from Zenith Blocks?
I mean, at this point, I'm not sure. I think I need to have a separate chat with Ashwin to explore a bit more detail what he just said there. So yeah, can't really say anything.
No worries. Yeah, I think that's one thing definitely about these sessions is, after these sessions, there's always a connection moment where we can sort of like regroup and say, okay, well, this is what you mentioned. Let's get that going. Okay, thank you, Ashwin, for bringing that up. But Dimitri, I just want to bring you in here. When compliance starts becoming a part of on-chain execution, how do you see governance models evolving to support that shift?
Yeah. So I think the question is really good. When thinking about what you just asked, is sort of how do we manage decisions when we start to bring actions from off-chain to on-chain, and I sort of go back to the world that I know, which is the financial industry and banking, and there the compliance is always layered around the transaction. And there's multiple touch points. Whenever a transaction is executed, there's multiple people that touch it, look at it, or analyze it, amend it from start to finish. And in some instances, I could probably count like 50 individuals having to do something about the transaction from start date until end date. And in many points in between, there's a compliance officer or a risk officer that needs to go and check it. And quite often there's a red button saying, "Oh, hold on, something's wrong. Let's stop it. Let's cancel it, or let's go back and verify that this is actually what was intended." So there's in the offline world, there's a lot of stop and go, or there's a lot of potential for stop and go. So I think the first real exercises whenever interacting something is first of all map out what are in the interactions from beginning to end that are happening off chain, and where is governance or compliance is involved, and then think about how do you bring that on chain, and is it possible to codify everything into a smart contract with all the ifs, or do we just need to live with some part of it being on chain, some part of it being off chain? So I think ultimately it's how do you codify the existing process into the transactions in a Web3 world, and I think it changes governance entirely. Essentially, the compliance officer becomes very similar to, starts to share a job with the developer. So even more so than now, if you think now it helps for anybody to understand tech. Anybody in finance should preferably know how to code Python. Now you start to think, are we shifting it to somebody who needs to know compliance officers now need to know how Web3 works, how blockchains operate. It's quite a significant demand for everybody to keep up to speed. So I think, it changes it a lot.
Thank you, Dimitri. Does anyone have comments on that, what Dimitri just mentioned?
Well, I just, as a response to, I think, this kind of question, whether we always will have a relation between the, let's say, some kind of human decisions and the algorithmic governance framework, or let's say, let's say, programmed kind of algorithms which make those decisions. So my answer would be definitely yes. There's no way to deal with in this world with, let's say, codifying everything. And it is, I think, so if we take the way I look at it, if we take the history of blockchain as a technology, it is wonderful technology and wonderful things that are happening based on this, but the idea that something can be governed algorithmically, purely, I think it's kind of a little bit naive. And I think this is what the industry now is dealing, the whole Web3 is dealing with. I mean, and I think it's not naive because it's not because people do not understand that. It has also a very kind of huge power. Another thing that is kind of let's say noticing in this sort of financial let's say what relation between DeFi, fintech, and let's call, I don't know, alt-fi or
TradFi.
Is that what DeFi, the promise of the technology, blockchain DeFi, bring power to the hands of everybody, not concentrate them into the large institutions which actually decide how things should be. However, when you get the power to, let's say, do your transactions without any intermediaries, because if I put transaction blockchain, basically nobody, not basically, that's the promise of technology, nobody can interact with it. It will just work. However, if I lose my keys, I lose my money. If I put too many zeros, as happened many times in the beginning, and so on and so forth, it's my problem. I don't have a phone to call somebody to ask, give my money back. And I think we always will have both. And now the interaction between those technologies is, okay, how can, let's say, custodial services can kind of plug into all these technologies, which basically can allow everybody to do whatever they want without any intermediaries. And yeah, I think this question will always be evolving, and I think it brings enormous opportunities. So from my let's say less informed perspective as a user of financial services, the biggest problem is the inertia of the current business structures and the ability to kind of leverage the new technologies and new abilities, and build actually business models and processes which will serve their own customer base way better than is possible currently. So it's a huge opportunity.
No, that's well explained. Ashwin, do you want to add anything to that, or Dimitri, and what Kabir mentioned? Or
that's the. In terms of what I can add is exactly the same thing. I'm aligned on what both Dimitri and Kabir suggested, and I was mentioning in a way a similar thing, that the biggest challenge for enterprise adoption is the complexity. In the inertia is because of the complexity. It's not the other way around. So as Kabir was saying, the inertia is a cause of the complexity around, leveraging and adopting Web3 technology. So, yeah, I would say it's like, you have to solve or resolve the inertia through simplifying adoption, basically, for mainstream.
on that note, I want to ask Kabir, on the decentralized compute, it sometimes it touches on AI and data handling, and you mentioned on this. Are there specific regulatory or compliance issues that you're encountering in that space?
That is the usual answer, kind of pre-answer to this question. Where do I start? Yeah, so let's say if I think about this, there are two aspects of kind of this question. One is all the compliance issues which are related to the entity which is building something in this, let's say, space. Another thing with the technology itself, which enables to do something, increase the compliance or change some kind of processes and so forth. So, and both are pretty complex, and they are kind of interacting, because the way you can build these technologies, the way you can kind of offer them to your clients, depends on both business side, how let's say, what are the requirements for us as business to be compliant, and how do we expose that, and also what technology allows to do. With the technology, it's more related to what was we were speaking before. It's this, let's call it inertia, and I have another let's say response to Ashwin. Is the way I look at it is, I think there is a limit how much you can simplify complex systems without actually just breaking the systems, so they just don't work anymore. And there is another way, which is, I think, is very uncomfortable to anybody, is actually embrace complexity. Because there are things that you cannot control, like when people can do transactions the way they want. You basically, I don't know, there was some kind of conversation. It's some from the old, let's say, not old, but let's say established financial businesses. Okay, this blockchain is interesting kind of technology. How do we sort of get into it and be able to control? And the technical person who was in this space says, no, you cannot. It's mathematics. You cannot break mathematics and cryptography. Sorry. So there is certain things that you have to basically embrace and you cannot control. And simplifying that is basically can end up saying, no, I simply cannot adopt it. I will stay where I am, because otherwise I go outside my, let's say, controlled environment. And I believe also this compliance, let's say, philosophy of how compliance is sought, how compliance should be done in industries, and probably in also financial use mostly, is by controlling things, like introducing more control layers. And while I cannot say that it's not correct, because this is how things are being managed, but there is a clear sort of clash between those perspectives, which also relates to integration between Web2, not only technology, but also business processes, and Web3, let's say, philosophy, technology, and business processes. Yep, and now I forgot the initial question.
No, so we're just looking at, are there any specific regulatory or compliance issues that you encounter in the space, especially in the decentralized compute that touches AI and data handling? So
in terms of as a business, it's not very concrete, but basically we kind of still kind of experience pretty much not even skepticism, but kind of almost adverse, let's say, opinions towards people and businesses who are operating in these spaces, where we kind of have to defend ourselves that we are trying to do good. Now, in terms of the technology, as I was mentioning, I think technologies that come from the Web3 space and blockchain space, they enable the current, let's say, business process and financial institutions is to do things way better than exactly what they're doing. And our as the way when we are building, let's say, technological solutions at Nonnet, we sort of embrace this philosophy of we build technology so that we don't assume or presume certain central points of control of the whole technology space, where everybody can choose how they want to, see, what kind of level of business process and control or whatever they want to enable in the business that they're doing. So what we're doing, for example, if I would say regarding, it was mentioned KYC, identification and identities. What we're doing, we transfer identification. We, let's say, securely transfer information about people's identity, like encrypted. We don't care about what is information. We can guarantee that it will be correctly transferred from point A to point B. What is KYC level of KYC that is needed for certain business processes? We simply don't care about it. It is business models business to say what is a KYC process that they accept as a compliance. Our business is to transfer this information securely and, let's say, intact. So we care about identification, and we, let's say, all and identification of processes that are happening within the network. But whether those identification, let's say, has to be related to identities, to real world identities or not, as a technology, we are actually not saying that. This is business models that are building of the technology. This is their decision. And by having this sort of freedom, we deal with this, with all kind of different compliance requirements for different businesses. And that enables us to work with the space.
Okay. And Ashwin, Dimitri, do you want to add anything to what Kabir has just mentioned right now?
So, I mean, I would add, as Kabir was saying, there's a certain, I think there has to be a certain balance between embracing complexity, as you were saying, or embracing and sort of seeing how do you simplify certain things which you can, or which are in the control. And that's, in my view, that's true for any new technology, any new thing which you are looking to adopt or make it mainstream. So that's sort of a trade-off or a balance which needs to be created. Otherwise, it's, and it could vary from business to business. Somebody would have a certain objective and they could embrace, or they could possibly look at how they can simplify, or they could sort of mix bag, that they would embrace 30% and they'll simplify 20%, and they don't care about the other remaining percent. So I'm just trying to say, I'm aligned on what you said, Kabir, but I feel there has to be a trade-off. There has to be sort of striking a balance between mainstreaming adoption and embracing the challenge of adoption of any new technologies, which is true in this case as well.
Yeah. I would just add that it's probably was already mentioned that fixing small problems is easier than fixing a big problem. So I think it's much easier to get buy-in if you're proposing to fix something small than if it's a completely new solution that overhauls everything. And then also that's the large enterprises, they are generally much more risk averse than the general public tends to think. For them, the potential for a reputational loss is more important than an improvement in efficiency. Particularly when improvement in efficiency means this a middle manager's role is on the line. So once it comes to that layer of decision, somebody starts to shout very loudly.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, let's have a cool off period. We usually have this as a break where we can just cool our heads. I think we have spoken a lot in various different topics. Well, during this segment, I just really ask our panelists a question which is just out of the blue, but I will ask this: what is your favorite use case in Web3 that isn't NFT or DeFi? Just random. Just wanted to know from. I mean, whoever wants to start it off. Whoever wants to begin with the.
I can go. I mean, in terms of the recent or the most recent kind of discussions and conversations we are having with different sectors and industries, I see a typical use case on RWA, which is real world assets tokenization, which is one of the key use cases which many institutions across different sectors are looking at. So if you look at real estate as a sector, they are looking to tokenize real estate, basically properties, and that's already been started as we speak, or that's already been implemented, especially in UAE, in regions like UAE. They've already started tokenizing property, commercial real estate, wherein you could have fractionalized ownership of through digital tokens, and that's exactly using blockchain technologies. Tying this to my earlier point, which I was making on what Kabir mentioned, is again, this is something like you have to strike a balance, whether you want to really adopt using technology to issue digital tokens and then sort of offer fractional ownership and tokenize the asset, or you really are stuck in, okay, is it so complex, what will I do, how would I transition? So it's a trade-off. Again, it would depend on business to business or sector to sector. Again, in finance, the same use case can be applied on other sectors as well. Right now, as I was sharing about the integration with trade trust, and that's exactly the entire use case on global trade, which is digitization of document authentication, verification, validation, return for global trade. So that's one big use case, which I think could be subsequently picked up by multiple sectors or industries. And third could be possibly the use and utility of stable coins, which could be a part of again the ecosystem in the payments or cross-border payment space. Then you could have stable coins issued, and that gets possibly that helps to sort of get trust or credibility uh, compared to what you do with crypto. So possibly it helps to gain trust much easier or much faster.
Dimitri, Kabir, thank you, Ashwin.
I'd say stable coins. So Ashwin mentioned it. I'm not sure if it qualifies as DeFi, but I'd say, stable coins is probably the biggest use case for me right now. Just in terms of its simplicity and the ability to explain it to a non-crypto person. How this can simplify payments, transfers, storing of personal wealth. Yeah, I think so whenever I go to a party and they ask me to explain like what's the advantage of blockchain, and I sort of say, well, you have this 12-letter or 12-word password, which is like access to your wallet, and that's essentially it's impossible to guess because there's actually an app that has three words. These are 3 words, and it can pinpoint a location, a square, any square by 3 by 3 meters square anywhere in the world, just by using 3 words. So having a wallet that is 12 words is like having like a grain of sand thrown into the ocean, and then being asked to find it. So it's pretty secure, and that's essentially like storing your wealth in that grain of sand. Gives you full custody, solves a lot of historical problems in transferring wealth. Yeah, I think that and stable coins is, I think very good use case.
Thank you. And Kabir, do you want to give us your favorite use case in Web3 that isn't NFT or DeFi?
That isn't
NFT or DeFi.
Yeah. Right. So since one was related probably to, something that I already was mentioning, but so Web3 is basically both social, economical, technological movement. It's not only technology. And decentralization is basically at pretty much core of it. And it has a potential, let's say, now it's not I'm conscious that it's not a use case, and but it's more basically to support certain evolution of human society beyond what we know. And I think we are at this point where this is sort of needed, because there's the current structures, and including technologies and governance structures that are struggle, let's say this way. Now it relates, let's say, this real world asset tokenization, in a sense that we basically, technology now enables pretty much everybody to create network states, whatever, or companies or so on and so forth, to have their own assets, to have their own means of payment, to have all these things that actually drive people crazy, because we don't know how to govern this kind of thing. We are used to have, let's say, one legal tender defined by territory, where everybody has to do that, and so on and so forth. However, the way, and there are many legitimate reasons to be worried, as with all the new technologies, but also there are, whether more or less, legitimate reasons to be excited of what kind of things it can help us to do as a society, global society. And that is depends not on technology itself, but how do we use it, as usual with technologies. So a little bit more maybe concrete, again, it's a very broad thing, it's related to the, let's say, beginnings of NoNet as the infrastructure layer for decentralized artificial intelligence, basically agents, which has a social aspect of saying, well, but then because now compute power is actually, it's like money. Well, some time ago it was oil, it was money, then it was oil, then it was data. What is, let's say, what gives the power in economic power, etc. So now it's compute. And it's like ability to for basically not to have this concentrated in let's say a couple of hands or whatever, brings certain richness to social development. So this is something that it's not a use case, but I think this is
I understand. I understand. I would want to add, like, one of the use cases that I'm sure even Ashwin will be related to this here in India. we have something called DigiYatra, which in domestically you can actually scan your face and everything, and it's actually being operated on a blockchain at the domestic airlines area where you guys are able to check in without really quickly, and the whole thing's on a blockchain. I didn't actually know this till someone actually told me this is on a blockchain. I was like, wow, that is so, like real world use case right there in front of me. I was like really impressed, even though I gotta say India is not the most friendliest when it comes to crypto and blockchain, if I may say, but they're definitely using it in areas which will benefit lowering, let's say, queues, number of people waiting in line. But definitely, I think Ashwin, if you want to add something or on that, or no, that's fine.
No, no, absolutely, Abek. As you said, I was not also knowing that DigiYatra is on blockchain. I'm not sure which blockchain, but yeah, if you're saying it should
Yeah,
be.
no, I also had no idea till I actually got to know. But yeah, I'll look into which blockchain they're on. But
Yeah.
yeah, I believe
These
it's.
are
Yeah.
yeah, these are actually real world key applications of the technology
Yeah.
which can really change and impact lives, as Kabir was also saying. So it can change how societies operate. How do you engage with businesses, or get
Absolutely.
served, or serve people. So it can be a game changer across different applications.
And I think I want to add something that you mentioned about stable coins, use of stable coins. I think the most recent thing that has come out is the Cardano card from Mergo. I don't know if you guys have been following that. It's quite a cool thing. I just want to showcase the website here if you guys are interested in checking it out. It's the cardanocard.io. It's by Emergo. It's at the moment show interest stage. So I highly encourage anyone, if they're interested in having this. It's any enterprise member can look into having an interest, maybe in the future, having their whole enterprise segment, everyone having one of these cards, and it's basically using ADA, Bitcoin. I think it was even the stable coins into real world purchases. So yeah, do check this out, cardanocard.io. And a bit about what's happening in the recent thing is treasury withdrawals. Of course, I want to talk a bit about that also. Are you guys following that on the Cardano side? Are you guys been looking at the governance, the treasury withdrawals, how it's going on the voting? No,
Not really. I
not
don't
really.
think.
Okay, well, I just want to.
I mean,
I just want to
not from my side, I would say.
Well, if you guys are really if the audience and yourselves are interested in looking into real world governance happening on Cardano, you guys can check out adastats.net /governance. That will allow you guys to check that out. But yeah, let's move on. I think we got a couple more questions, and then we can definitely have a good day. But let me get into governance, since we have been talking about governance the whole way. It's Dimitri, you worked on multiple governance framework. What do you think successful protocols are doing differently when it comes to designing governance systems, especially when targeting institutions or public sector adoption?
Yeah. So this is sort of along the theme of how the enterprises work, and I think so there's a lot of politics involved in the enterprises, and particularly middle management. So it definitely helps to find a senior sponsor who's on board with the whole idea and able to enforce the decision across the middle management to avoid the politics. And then they have to recognize that large enterprises move slowly, so patience is quite key. It's the way they built. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved. Also helps to learn the existing governance systems in the industry, like in banking, what sort of committees are generally involved in decision making. There's always a risk committee. There's often an asset and liability committee. There's a board committee. So, and trying to adapt the protocol's governance to cater to the structure does to help. Also, prioritize transparency. So, transparent processes, structured decision-making paths, and audit trails. They generally better align with institutional expectations. That includes formal voting frameworks and fallback mechanism in case of governance failure or attacks. So it needs to be sort of very well thought through, and circuit breakers implemented in between, as frequently as possible. And I sort of say that for enterprises, this might go against what Kabir thinks, that decentralization is not the selling point for them. It's more the aligning with existing governance systems and institutions, and then adjust. I think when mentioning decentralization to an enterprise, they tend to put the other way around.
Yeah.
And finally, so it should try to make it as so it feels as familiar to them as possible. That aligns to their rules, their roles, and not sort of a free for all in open source.
Okay, and Ashwin, just wanted to loop you into this. Does ZenitBlock provide any tools or guidance for the guidance workflows? Like, are your enterprise clients asking about DAO participation or compliance-ready governance features or anything of that sort?
Yeah, big. So in terms of governance tools, there is a certain discussions and conversations happening on how can enterprise get role-based access, right? They have different roles across different functions. So can they get role-based access in the governance framework? And then of course there's voting, and that's a integral part of the Cardano ecosystem as well. And then we have compliance reporting. So these are all things which Zenit blocks, or what we're trying or what we're aiming to help organization design and manage governance workflows. So essentially, as I was sharing with the recent collaboration with Trade Trust, that's also one of the regulated projects we've recently integrated with, which essentially highlights the importance of transparency and auditability, especially with respect to the entire documentation for global trade. So we see governance as a framework. It just may not be just the compliance requirement, but it is a tool, or it's a ecosystem which would help organizations build trust and possibly operate more efficiently.
Okay, and does anyone have anything to add on that, what Ashwin mentioned, or?
I would like to add on one thing.
Sure.
If that's time.
No, absolutely.
I mean, respond maybe is, so yes, I definitely, let's say, observe this, that decentralization is not a selling point, and also open source is not a selling point, and say free stuff is somehow not a selling point. However, I think there is a certain kind of, well, difficult to say misunderstanding, but again, the kind of a perspective, because I remember when we started in the open source, build a company with open source, the kind of most often question from pretty much people who are not involved in open source: why open source? How are you going to make business out of it? It's like, what? You're doing free stuff. However, it's so from that place, we basically know statistics that 99% of all software products, commercial or not, involve open source in some manner. Above 50 involve open source components in a very substantial way. So they depend on that. for one reason, because it's better. So now there is a certain this conceptual thing, also both related to technologies, I believe, and also to the way, let's say, structures are built. That when you have when you have a Lego, Lego blocks, you can build anything. The smaller the Lego blocks, the more possibility for people to build whatever they want. And that can be as centralized and controlled as people want. So a way to kind of adapt to the needs of also businesses from that perspective is to have a technology which is decentralized in the sense that you can build anything. You can build control structures where they do not exist, rather than try to build a control structure and then try to see how it can be flexibly adapted to the changing world. So that's a kind of conceptual way of, let's say, thinking about that. And let's say, I think a kind of an example would be internet. Internet is one of the example of completely decentralized technology, which when people were building internet were thinking exactly about that, how to make it so that everybody, you have a cable, you plug it in, that's it, you get an address. And of course, there are all kind of technological things. It's not that simple, but basically it's one of the most decentralized technologies. So saying that there's no business value in it, it's, well, now a lot of businesses are built on internet. And this is where we are looking, let's say, towards. So another way, let's say, sometimes we kind of describe what we are trying to do is Internet of Compute. So yeah, that would be response to Dimitri's, let's say, yeah, no.
I just want to comment on the internet comment. I mean, as much as you say internet is decentralized, I mean, to some level, some people can argue that, saying, well, it's still being controlled by in some way, or else every part of the world would have internet, right? So, for example, Africa, has a lot. So I don't know if that's what would you, as in, but I get your point on the internet thing. But yeah, I just want to also mention that I think with decentralization, I think open source is, personally, I feel that open source is the way to go. We have our own open source arm, and I see a lot of great things happening with, when Christian comes up and saying, oh, we just got this project, they're open source, and we have got a lot of integration with them. So it's really nice to see the sharing is caring sort of approach. That's something to add. But Ashwin, do me, sure.
Just one keyword that I forgot to say is what this technology, let's say decentralization to some extent, or technology solution what gives is no vendor locking, which is actually something that is a selling point, I believe.
Yeah. I would definitely agree on that one. I think in the next stage, I think what we can do is to let's talk about wrapping this thing up by talking about a bit as you were mentioning about, is decentralized compute and making Cardano. What makes Cardano unique in this space? So, Kabir, I'm going to pick on you again. You are leading the charge on decentralized compute unit, and how does your platform enable compute-heavy applications in the real world? And where do you see the most traction so far?
So in a quite simple manner is that we basically any compute from the protocol perspective, a compute device is a compute device. So the ability of compute device is a protocol can handle any and also this is the way we, let's say, when we were thinking where to start, we started from small devices. But if we can enable small devices to communicate and to exchange value and to exchange compute, for sure we can in the same manner we can sort of implement the same thing with the large devices. So from that perspective, a data center for us is a huge compute. It's a huge computer, and this is how we deal with compute-heavy workload.
Awesome.
Exactly the same way, and that enables to do this what's called in the industry IoT and edge clouds. where you actually have to have an integration between small devices running around, mobile phones, maybe sensors and so forth, edge devices, and the huge compute centers where compute load has to orchestrate itself where it's needed most, because we know that there are compute loads which data centers will have to handle. You cannot do that on mobile phones.
Ashwin, just adding on to that, do you see centralized compute fitting into enterprise workflow, especially those that involve machine learning, real-time analytics, or even data processing?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Abhik. I think that could be one of the significant applications of decentralized compute. And it could be around use cases. Let's say in financial institution, it could be used for fraud prevention or fraud detection. In supply chain, it could be used for possibly optimization of the supply chain operations. So there could be different applications of computation across decentralized technologies. Yeah, I see there's a lot of significant potential around different areas.
Awesome. And last but not least, Dimitri, just wanted to ask your final thoughts here. When working, is there a working decentralized infrastructure like NewNet? What governance or initiative models do you believe are essential to keep ecosystems balanced and sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, a few places I've been, I've sort of had to, when talk about AI in particular, there's I face sort of questions around model testing, model validation, model governance. In that, this is mainly because of much more compliance coming on top of financial institutions. To be able to use an AI model, there needs to be these three elements very well sort of embedded. The model that uses AI needs to be tested, validated, and there needs to be strong governance around it. Because otherwise it won't get implemented. So I think, one needs to think about those things when pitching it to enterprises. And another thing about the compute, also data transfers between regions seems to be sometimes a sticking point. So sort of, if you have customer data in Portugal, sending that to the US to being processed and then returned back can sometimes, have regulatory challenges.
Okay. Any comments on that, Ashwin, Kabir? Just asking.
I have a comment as always, but with that, in terms of this specific use case that Dmitry mentioned about, let's say, transferring data. So one of the kind of, let's say, things that we were thinking when we were building technology, and in terms of orchestration, so what we are enabling is, let's say, to define in the workflow, this kind of data can be in Europe, cannot be in US. And then the orchestration itself will handle it by having ability to understand where data centers are located and to pipe this data where it's needed. I mean, there is a more kind of involved, but that in terms of protocols, the same. Basically, what we're doing, we're finding best machine for certain business processes which are defined on business for compute, which is defined on the business process level. So if there is a business process which defines my compute has to be there, and the machine has to be, let's say, powered by, I don't know, green energy, something like this, the protocol will find. But the kind of goal of the protocol, and I think it's kind of it's important part to consider that protocol in this sense should be agnostic. It has to take values, what is needed, and to kind of implement. And then all the other things come in, like security, guarantees that it's actually being done, let's say provenance of what's happening, both in terms of processes, data, so on and so forth. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So the last segment really is called What Next? And just want to know from all three of you guys, what's next in your roadmap? We can start with Kabir on NewNet. What's your next stage? What's happening? What's the newest things coming up at Unit?
Try to be shorter.
Yeah.
So in a very general, our next phase is adoptions of technology, and specifically of the orchestration layer. So we have basically two layers: orchestration layer and payment layer. So orchestration layer is released with right now, I think 0.7 is a version. We are also kind of putting new features and so forth, but then the line is adoptions for that layer, and building payments layer. So enabling also with adoptions of the orchestration layer and compute for the businesses and community to also provide payment layer. And yeah, this is what's next. So, and very, very simply, we have now major releases every quarter, and then we're releasing features which are, tested features, just minor releases. And yeah, next is
Awesome.
data release.
Awesome, exciting times. Dimitri, what's next for Dynamic Strategies?
Yeah, so we're currently building an app called Block Margin. We're about a month away from the MVP. We are in conversations with a couple of banks and data providers. And the idea there is to do settlements of interest rate derivatives on Cardano in dollars. So in simple terms, if you buy a house and you have a mortgage, often this mortgage is in a variable rate tracker, so it changes monthly. What a person can do is go to a financial institution and try to fix that rate for a couple of years, so they don't have any risk to the interest rate. In the background, this is a financial product. It's an interest rate derivative, like a swap.
Yeah.
And before, if you go to a bank and you'd want to get one of these, they charge you about 1% on top of a fair price, which is a lot, because there's a lot of manual work involved around setting it up, onboarding as a customer, and we thought you could probably do the same thing on a blockchain with a web wallet, rather than having to go to a bank. So we've pretty much built something like that, and it applies to. It should give cheaper prices to retail to do hedges of interest rates, and it's also a product that banks trade between themselves and with large corporates. They're called forward rate agreements. It's one of the largest markets in the world that nobody heard about, other than the Financial Times, yeah, we think it fixes a problem, which is operational burden to transact these. I think we can improve the operational part quite significantly. So about a month away, want to trial it with a partner, and then so towards the end of this year, take it to production, and then release it to the public to test.
So we're expecting some sort of a preview in the Cardano Summit, is it?
Oh, that'd be good timing.
Yeah. Just gave you an idea there. Whoa. Yeah, why not?
I'm due to talk about it on the Cardano Coffee next week.
If you have a link, do let us know. I can advertise that.
I'll ping it here. It's running on a test net. But there's enough stuff there for people to play around on a preview testnet.
Sure.
I'll send to you.
Sure, absolutely. Ashman, what's next for Zenit Blocks?
Great, Vic. So a lot of things in progress, and we are working towards launching a few more modules from our side in the coming month or so, and we should be ready with more tools, especially to again, sort of may sound cliched, but it's essentially to sort of see how we can simplify and make things easier, basically, for enterprise adoption of blockchain. So that's one. We are also in discussions with a few government institutions, a few more enterprises in the financial services space, for again sort of leveraging how we could leverage the partnership which we have now with IMDA, because that gives us a significant validation and credibility with the entire ecosystem, especially when you're sort of tied up or integrated with a government institution platform. Then it sort of helps you build that trust. So we are talking to a few uh, institutions in the both government, public sector, and private space, and expecting to sort of onboard more partners in the coming months. And then, of course, we're looking to see how we can expand our collaboration and the kind of learning we have with Cardano ecosystem and beyond. And we're looking to see how we can expand the entire collaboration to sort of uh, bring Cardano again in the mainstream also in terms of real
Absolutely.
world adoption. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what we would be looking to do, and let's see how many things we are going to fall through or we're going to achieve.
I would certainly recommend you having a chat with Dimitri. I kind of see there could be a synergy there to some level. I think you guys have the same sort of industry. There could be something that could click. So, just encourage everyone, later on after this show, definitely get in touch. Definitely I'll email all three of you to definitely get you guys in touch. With that being said, I just want to give a big shout out to the Intersect team that are at Rare Evo. They're representing us there. And of course, I know NewNet's going to be at Rare Evo too. So, if there is any enterprise members that are going to Rare Evo, I just want to share this map with you guys. I don't know if it's showing on the thing, but yeah. There it is. We are situated right here, and I see New Nets right here, right next to the coffee. I like how they're really close to the coffee lounge. Yeah, so this is a good map just for you guys to take reference to where we are. Of course, we have Sundial there. Sheldon's leading that. But yeah, shout out to the whole team that's there. One thing I just want to mention that all our enterprise members are represented at our booth. So please stop by, say hi to the team. There's Nick and Lorenzo there who are happy to do an interview with you guys. So please stop by and say hi to them. With that being said, if there's nothing else, we can
I
call it wrap.
wanted to just point out one of the, let's see, because there was a question of what's next, one concrete thing, which is related to what you were just saying, that we just finished our kind of quite a long project which goal was to run Cardano SPOs on Nunet. And what's next is basically we're now kind of talking to small community of testers which can test the solution, and we are looking to scale it up and actually to integrate with the Cardano community. And this is something that we will also be talking and having presented in the booth in Rare Evo, apart from other things. So that's one of the things that is next, which is pretty already baked and kind of sort of looking how to scale it up.
Awesome. I'm sure the team at Insect and everyone at Rary was looking forward to all the presentations, including yours, as to what is happening and all the great advancements in the Cardano ecosystem. But yes, thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for everyone tuning in, listening in, people who will be tuning in, listening in to recording. Thank you guys. And it's always a pleasure to host these sessions and have great panelists such as you guys. So thank you again. And till next time, thank you. Take care, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Sandeep.
you. Bye.
Thank you.